The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched far beyond what most eyes could see. Its crystal walls caught the light from 1,000 different stars, creating rainbows that danced across the floor. In this place, representatives from 847 different species gathered to discuss the future of their galaxy. Elder Kethmoran moved slowly to the center of the hall. His body was almost see-through, like glass filled with swirling mist. He was older than most civilizations. His people, the Vorthak, had watched stars being born and dying for millions of years. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of ages. "My friends," he began. His words translated instantly into hundreds of languages. "I come before you today with a warning. It is not the first time I have given this warning, and it will not be the last." Many of the younger species rolled their eyes. The Zephyrians clicked their mandibles in annoyance. The Corvani shifted restlessly in their seats. They had heard Elder Kethmoran's warnings before, and they always seemed to be about things that happened long ago. But some of the older species leaned forward. They remembered other warnings from the Vorthak, and they remembered what happened when those warnings were ignored. "In the outer arm of our galaxy," Elder Kethmoran continued, "there lives a species called humanity. They are young. They appear weak. They fight among themselves constantly. Most of you think they are nothing more than primitive animals who have barely learned to leave their home world." A few laughs echoed through the hall. Commander Vextar of the Hegemony spoke up. "Elder, we have observed these humans for over 200 years. They cannot even stop killing each other long enough to properly explore their own solar system. What possible threat could they pose to anyone?" Elder Kethmoran turned his ancient eyes toward the commander. "That, my young friend, is exactly the mistake that others have made before you." The elder raised one translucent hand, and holographic images filled the air above the council floor. They showed a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. Ships moved around the planet. Crude, simple vessels that looked like toys compared to the sleek warships of the great galactic powers. "Look at them," someone called out from the back of the hall. "Their largest ship is smaller than our shuttles." "Their weapons are chemical explosives and simple energy beams," added another voice. "We stopped using such primitive technology thousands of years ago." Elder Kethmoran nodded slowly. "Yes, that is what you see. That is what you are meant to see." The images changed, showing scenes from human history. Wars, conflicts, destruction. Cities burning, soldiers fighting, weapons firing. "They never stop fighting," Elder Kethmoran said. "For their entire recorded history, they have been at war with someone. With each other. With their environment, with disease, with starvation, with the very planet that gave them life. You see this as weakness. You see this as proof that they are primitive and divided." The elder paused, letting his words sink in. "I see it as the most terrifying training program in the known galaxy." An uncomfortable silence fell over the great hall. Ambassador Yuna sat in the human observation section, a small area set aside for species that were not yet full members of the Galactic Council. She was young for a diplomat with short black hair and intelligent dark eyes. She listened carefully to every word, taking notes on a small device. She had been trying for 3 years to get humanity accepted into the Galactic Council. Most species saw humans as too primitive and too violent to join the civilized galaxy. They were allowed to observe and learn, but not to participate in important decisions. Yuna had grown frustrated with the constant dismissal of her people, but now she found herself oddly worried about Elder Kethmoran's words. What did the ancient being know about humanity that she did not? "Let me tell you a story," Elder Kethmoran continued. 50,000 years ago, there was a species called the Drakthul. They were strong, proud, and cruel. They decided that humans looked like good slaves. The Drakthul had energy shields, plasma weapons, and faster-than-light travel. Humans had barely discovered fire. The images in the air changed again, showing tall, reptilian creatures with advanced technology facing primitive humans with stone tools and animal skins. The Drakthul came to Earth in great ships. They began taking humans as slaves. At first, the humans ran and hid. The Drakthul laughed at how easy it was. They took thousands of humans to work in their mines on distant worlds. Elder Kethmoran's voice grew quieter, forcing everyone to lean forward to hear him. Then something interesting happened. The humans stopped running. They began to fight back. With sticks and stones against energy weapons, with animal skins against powered armor. The Drakthul thought it was amusing at first. The images showed humans attacking the alien raiders with primitive weapons. being cut down by advanced technology, then getting back up and attacking again. The humans kept fighting. When their weapons broke, they made new ones. When their fighters died, new ones took their place. They learned from every defeat. They adapted to every weapon used against them, and slowly they began to win small victories. Commander Vextar laughed. Elder, surely you don't expect us to believe that Stone Age primitives defeated an advanced spacefaring civilization? Elder Kethmoran turned those ancient eyes on him again. Commander, when was the last time you saw a Drakthul? The laughter died. The humans spent 2,000 years hunting them. Every Drakthul ship that came to Earth was captured or destroyed. Every Drakthul colony was found and emptied. Every Drakthul military base was turned to dust. They did not stop until the very last Drakthul was dead. The hall was completely quiet now, and when it was over, the humans went back to fighting each other. They forgot about the Drakthul. They forgot about the stars. They forgot everything except the lessons they had learned about war. Elder Kethmoran gestured to the images of modern humanity. This is not a primitive species that fights because they do not know better. This is a species that has been forged in the fires of constant conflict for their entire existence. Every human is born into a world where war is normal, where fighting for survival is just another day, where the strong protect the weak and the weak become strong. He paused again. So I give you this warning as I have given it before, and as I will give it again. Do not attack humanity. Do not threaten their worlds. Do not harm their young. Do not mistake their current peaceful behavior for weakness. They are not fighting right now because they choose not to fight. That choice can change very quickly. Commander Vextar stood up. Elder, even if your story is true, that was 50,000 years ago. The galaxy is different now. We have weapons they cannot imagine. We have shields they cannot break. We have fleets that could turn their entire solar system to ash. Elder Kethmoran looked at him for a long moment. Yes, Commander. That is exactly what the Drakthul thought. Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Bone Crusher, and laughed at the old fool's warnings. Through the great viewing window he could see his fleet, 200 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. Each one was a masterpiece of Kralveth engineering, bristling with weapons that could crack planets and shields that could stop a star's fury. The Kralveth were the apex predators of this section of the galaxy. In the past 10 years, they had conquered 17 star systems. Some species fought back and were destroyed. Others surrendered immediately and became slaves. Either way worked fine for Commander Zethkar. Commander, his second-in-command, Captain Vorthek, approached with a datapad. We are receiving long-range scans of the human solar system. Their defenses are pathetic. Zethkar took the pad and studied the information. The humans had 37 small ships guarding their system. 37 against his 200. Their largest vessel was barely a quarter the size of his smallest escort ship. What about their weapons? Zethkar asked. Primitive kinetic projectiles and basic energy beams. Vorthek replied. Our shields will barely notice them. Our armor could probably stop them without power. Zethkar handed back the pad and walked to his command chair. It was made from the bones of the last leader who had dared to resist the Kralveth Dominion. He liked to remind himself daily of what happened to those who stood in his way. Communications, he barked. Open a channel to all ships. It is time to add another system to the Dominion. Meanwhile, on the research station Harmony orbiting Jupiter, Dr. Sora sat in front of her monitoring equipment. As the lead xenobiologist for the Human Science Consortium, it was her job to study alien species and their behavior. Today, that job was about to become much more important than she had ever imagined. Sora, called her assistant J1 from across the laboratory. I'm picking up massive energy signatures at the edge of the solar system. This is bigger than anything we've ever seen. Sora frowned and checked her own sensors. What she saw made her blood run cold. A fleet of alien ships was approaching Earth, and they were enormous. Get me a connection to Admiral Donghyun immediately, she said. Back on Earth. Admiral Donghyun was in a meeting with the Solar Defense Council when his communicator buzzed with an emergency signal. He had been expecting this day for years, though he had hoped it would never come. Admiral, Sora's voice crackled through the static. We have 200 alien warships approaching the outer system. They're transmitting on all frequencies. Admiral Donghyun closed his eyes for a moment. He was 57 years old and had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. Every war game, every training exercise, every sleepless night had been leading to this. "Patch me through to the fleet," he said quietly. Within minutes, the transmission from Commander Zethkar reached every human ship, station, and colony in the solar system. "Primitive humans." The alien commander's voice was full of contempt. "I am Commander Zethkar of the Kralveth Dominion. You are now under our control. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will make your entire species suffer for generations before we finally put you out of your misery." The transmission showed the Kralveth commander, a tall, scaled creature with 4 arms and cold yellow eyes. Behind him, through the windows of his ship, they could see the massive fleet approaching Earth. Admiral Dong-Yun looked around the command center at his officers. These men and women had served with him for decades. They had families, children, dreams for the future. In a few hours, many of them would probably be dead. "Open a channel to the alien fleet," he said. "Channel open, sir." Admiral Dong-Yun stood up and walked to the communication station. He thought about all the diplomatic training he had received, all the careful words that were supposed to be used in first contact situations. Then he thought about his granddaughter, who was visiting Luna Base on a school trip. "Commander Zethkar," he said clearly. "This is Admiral Dong-Yun of the Earth Defense Fleet. I have a message for you and your fleet." He paused for just a moment. "Go to hell." Commander Zethkar stared at the screen for several seconds after the transmission ended. Then he began to laugh, a harsh, rasping sound that echoed across the bridge of the Bone Crusher. "Did you hear that?" he said to his officers. "The primitive actually thinks he can fight us. This will be more entertaining than I thought." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target their moon. I want to crack it open like an egg. Let them see what happens to those who defy the Kralveth Dominion." "Sir," the weapons officer hesitated. "Our scans show thousands of humans living on their moon. Many of them appear to be younglings." Zethkar's smile grew wider. "Even better. Nothing teaches a lesson like the screams of the young." On Luna Base, Teacher Minsu was leading a group of 23 children through the observation deck. The kids were excited to see Earth from space. Their faces pressed against the thick windows as they pointed at the blue marble hanging in the black sky. "Teacher Minsu," asked 8-year-old Hana, "why do the grown-ups seem so worried today?" Minsu had been wondering the same thing. All morning, the base staff had been acting strangely. There were emergency drills, worried conversations, and a lot of people making calls to Earth. "I'm sure it's nothing to worry about," he told the children, though he didn't believe it himself. That's when the first plasma beam hit Luna Base. The base shook violently, throwing everyone to the floor. Emergency lights began flashing and alarms started screaming. Through the windows, the children could see bright lights in space, alien ships firing weapon after weapon at their home. "Everyone stay calm," Minsu shouted over the noise. "We need to get to the emergency shelters." But even as he said it, he knew it was too late. The Kralveth weapons were designed to destroy entire cities. Luna Base, for all its advanced construction, was never meant to survive a military assault. Dr. Sora watched in horror from Harmony Station as Luna Base was torn apart. Her instruments recorded everything: the plasma beams that melted through the base's hull, the secondary explosions as life support systems failed, the brief transmissions from the people trapped inside. The last transmission came from Teacher Minsu. The video was broken and filled with static, but Sora could see him holding the children close as the walls cracked around them. "Tell our families we love them," he said quietly. "Tell them we were brave." Then the transmission cut to nothing. 847 civilians died when Luna Base was destroyed. 23 of them were children on a school field trip. Sora sat in shocked silence for several minutes after the base disappeared in a ball of fire. Then she activated her emergency recorder and began documenting everything she had seen. Every weapon discharge, every energy signature, every second of the attack. She uploaded the data to the quantum communication network that connected all human colonies and ships across the galaxy. Within hours, every human in known space would see what had happened to Luna Base. They would see the children's faces. They would hear Teacher Minsu's last words, and they would remember. Commander Zethkar was pleased with the demonstration. The humans' moon base had been destroyed completely with no survivors. Surely now the primitives would understand that resistance was hopeless. "Send another message to the human fleet," he ordered. Tell them they have 1 hour to surrender or their home planet is next. But as he waited for the human response, something strange began happening on his sensors. Ships were appearing throughout the solar system, ships that hadn't been there before. At first there were dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. Where are they coming from? Zethkar demanded. Unknown, sir, his sensor officer replied, panic creeping into his voice. They're decloaking all around us. Our scans show nothing, then suddenly they're just there. On Earth, Admiral Donghyun received a priority message on his personal communicator. The message was short and came from Admiral Hyunwoo, a man he had known since their academy days but hadn't heard from in over 20 years. Donghyun, the message read, "We saw what happened to Luna Base. We're coming home. Hold the line for 6 more hours. Make them pay for every inch. Humanity remembers its children." Admiral Donghyun smiled grimly and deleted the message. Then he opened a channel to his fleet. "All ships," he announced, "this is Admiral Donghyun. The aliens have made their choice. They decided to kill our children. Now we're going to show them why that was a mistake." Commander Zethkar stared at his tactical display in growing confusion and fear. What had started as an easy conquest was turning into something he didn't understand. Human ships were appearing everywhere, not just in the solar system but throughout known space. "Report," he barked at his sensor officer. "Sir, we're detecting human vessels in over 40 star systems. They're decloaking near our supply bases, our colonies, our patrol routes. How is this possible? Our intelligence said they barely had ships outside their home system." Before Zethkar could answer, a new voice came over the communications channel. It was calm, professional, and terrifying in its certainty. "Commander Zethkar, this is Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo of the Human Expeditionary Force. You made a mistake when you killed our children. Now you're going to learn why the elder races told you to leave us alone." The main screen flickered and suddenly they could see the human admiral. He was older than Admiral Donghyun, with gray hair and scars on his face that spoke of battles fought long ago. Behind him, through the windows of his ship, they could see stars. But these weren't the stars of the human solar system. "Impossible," Zethkar whispered. "Where is he?" His navigation officer checked their star charts and went pale. "Sir, according to the background stellar formations, that transmission is coming from the Vega system. That's 25 light-years from here." "You're wondering how we got here so fast," Admiral Hyunwoo continued, as if he could hear their conversation. "You're wondering how we have ships and systems you thought we'd never visited. You're wondering how we knew you were coming." The image zoomed out, showing the Admiral's ship. It was unlike anything the Kralveth had ever seen. Sleek, dark, and somehow wrong in a way that hurt to look at. Around it, space itself seemed to bend and twist. "The truth is, Commander, we've been watching you for years. We've been in your space, studying your ships, learning your tactics. We've been waiting for someone like you to make the mistake you just made." Captain Taehyun sat in the command chair of the stealth ship Incheon's Vengeance, watching as Kralveth supply convoy approached his position. His ship was invisible to their sensors, hidden by technology that bent light and energy around it like water around a stone. "Target the lead transport," he told his weapons officer. "Remember, we want prisoners who can tell us about their command structure." The Vengeance fired once. The beam that emerged from its weapons array wasn't like anything the galaxy had ever seen before. Instead of simple energy or plasma, it was a focused gravity wave that crushed the target ship's hull like an empty can. The other ships in the convoy tried to run, but they were too late. More human ships decloaked around them, appearing like ghosts in the void. Within minutes, the entire convoy was destroyed or captured. "Send a message to Admiral Hyunwoo," Captain Taehyun ordered. "Supply route 7 Alpha is clear. Moving to the next target." Back in the Sol system, Admiral Donghyun watched as more human ships continued to appear. These weren't the small, simple vessels that the Kralveth had seen in their intelligence reports. These were warships, sleek, deadly, and built for one purpose. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving transmission from the Busan's Fury. Admiral Hyunwoo wants to speak with you." The screen lit up with the image of his old friend. "Donghyun, sorry we're late to the party. How are you holding up?" Admiral Donghyun smiled. "We're managing. How many ships do you have out there? In this system?" "About 3,000. "Throughout the galaxy?" Admiral Hyunwoo shrugged. "Let's just say we've been busy for the past 20 years. The number hit Commander Zethkar like a physical blow. 3,000 ships? That was impossible. His own fleet was considered one of the largest in the galaxy. and he only had 200 vessels. "You're lying," he transmitted to the human admiral. "No species could hide that many ships." Admiral Hyunwoo's expression didn't change. "Commander, you made the mistake of thinking we were primitive because we fight among ourselves. What you didn't understand is that those fights taught us how to build ships that your sensors can't detect. They taught us how to move without being seen. They taught us how to strike without warning." He gestured to something off-screen. "Show him." Suddenly, every human ship in the system became visible. They weren't just hiding around Earth. They filled the entire solar system. Massive battleships that dwarfed anything the Kralveth had built. Carrier vessels that launched swarms of fighters. Support ships that seemed to bend space itself around them. "How?" Sethkar whispered. "We've been preparing for this day since we first learned we weren't alone in the universe," Admiral Hyunwoo explained. "Every human ship you've seen in your intelligence reports was a decoy. Every primitive weapon system was a fake. Every sign that we were divided and weak was carefully designed to make species like yours underestimate us." On the space station, Harmony, Dr. Sora watched in amazement as the human fleet revealed itself. She had lived her entire life thinking that humanity was alone and vulnerable in a hostile galaxy. Now she realized that her species had been playing a game of deception for decades. Her personal communicator chimed with a message from Earth Command. "Dr. Sora, this is Director Yoonji of Human Intelligence Services. Your research station is about to become very important. We need you to document everything that happens next. The galaxy needs to understand what occurs when someone threatens human children." Before Sora could respond, something extraordinary happened on her screens. The human ships began to move, and they moved in ways that seemed to violate the laws of physics. They didn't accelerate gradually like normal spacecraft. They simply appeared in new locations as if space itself was folding around them. "Impossible," she whispered, then remembered that she had already thought that word several times today. Commander Minji floated in the void between stars, her powered armor making her invisible to enemy sensors. Around her, 49 other Void Marines hung in space like deadly ghosts. They had been ejected from their transport ship while it was still in stealth mode, and now they drifted toward their target, a Kralveth command vessel. The Kralveth had shields that could stop the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. They had armor that could survive the heat of a star's surface, but they had never prepared for enemies who could survive in the vacuum of space and fight ship-to-ship combat with nothing but their personal weapons. "Remember," Minji spoke quietly into her helmet communicator, "we need their command staff alive. Everyone else is optional." The Void Marines didn't need airlocks or docking bays. They simply cut holes in the enemy ship's hull and poured inside like a flood of death. The Kralveth crew, safe behind their shields and armor, suddenly found themselves facing enemies inside their own ship. It was a massacre. Within 30 minutes, Commander Minji stood on the bridge of the Kralveth vessel, her armored boots clicking on metal deck plates slick with alien blood. The ship's captain lay at her feet, unconscious but alive. "Package secured," she reported to her superiors. "Ready for interrogation?" Admiral Hyunwoo turned back to his communication with Commander Sethkar. The Kralveth commander looked like he had aged 10 years in the past hour. "You want to know the real difference between your species and mine?" the human admiral asked. "You conquer because you enjoy causing pain. You destroy because it makes you feel powerful. You kill children because you think it will break your enemy's spirit." He leaned forward in his chair. "We fight because we have to. We kill because we must. And when someone threatens our children..." He paused, letting the words sink in. "We don't stop until the threat is gone. Completely, permanently, forever." Commander Sethkar tried to rally his forces, but it was hopeless. His ships were being destroyed or captured faster than he could count them. The humans didn't just have superior technology. They fought with a coordination and ruthlessness that was terrifying to witness. "All ships," he broadcast desperately, "retreat to Rally Point 7. We'll regroup and..." "Commander," Admiral Hyunwoo interrupted, "there is no Rally Point 7 anymore. Captain Taehyun destroyed it 3 hours ago, along with Rally Points 1 through 6. The Kralveth commander felt something he had never experienced before in his life. Complete, hopeless fear. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "We want you to understand something," Admiral Hyunwoo replied. "The elders warned you. They told you not to rouse humanity. They told you not to harm our children. You ignored them, and now you're going to pay the price." He stood up from his command chair. Surrender now and some of your people might survive this. Continue to fight and we will hunt down every last member of your species. The choice is yours, but you have exactly 60 seconds to decide. Commander Zethkar looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were the finest warriors of the Kralveth Dominion, beings who had never known defeat. Now they looked terrified. "We surrender," he said quietly. Admiral Hyunwoo nodded. "Smart choice. Now you're going to help us find every other species that thinks humanity looks like an easy target. And you're going to help us explain to them why that's a very bad idea." The Kralveth colony world of Vorthcom had never seen an enemy fleet in its skies. For 200 years it had been a symbol of Kralveth power. A fortress world with planetary shields, orbital weapons platforms, and a garrison of their finest warriors. Now Governor Kralseth watched through his command center's windows as human ships filled the sky like dark clouds. They had appeared without warning, materializing out of empty space as if the universe itself had decided to declare war on his people. "Sir," his communications officer said with a shaking voice, "the humans are transmitting." The holographic display activated, showing a human woman in military uniform. She was younger than Governor Kralseth had expected, with short black hair and calm, dark eyes that seemed to look right through him. "I am Commander Da-Hyun of the Human Council's War Cabinet," she said in perfect Kralveth language. "You have one choice to make, and you have 5 minutes to make it." Governor Kralseth tried to speak, but she held up her hand. "You can surrender now, and your people will be treated according to the rules of war. Your soldiers will be prisoners, your civilians will be protected, your children will be safe, or you can fight, and we will turn this entire world into a memorial for the children you killed on Luna Base." She gestured to something off-screen. "To help you understand your situation, we're going to show you what happened to the hegemony fleet that tried to reinforce you." The display changed to show space near the Vorthchem system. A fleet of 50 Kralveth warships was approaching the planet at full speed. Governor Kralseth felt a moment of hope. Perhaps his people could still win this war. Then the human ships attacked. It wasn't like any battle Governor Kralseth had ever seen. The human vessels didn't exchange fire with the Kralveth fleet. They simply reached out with invisible forces and began tearing the enemy ships apart. Metal twisted and broke. Shields collapsed like soap bubbles. Entire vessels were crushed into balls of scrap metal in seconds. "Your reinforcement fleet is gone," Commander Da-Hyun continued calmly. "Every ship, every crew member. They chose to fight, so we chose to destroy them completely." She leaned forward slightly. "Now, Governor Kralseth, what is your choice?" The governor looked around his command center at his officers. These were brave warriors who had served the Dominion faithfully for decades. But they were also smart enough to recognize certain death when they saw it. "We surrender," he said quietly. Meanwhile, on the other side of Kralveth space, a very different scene was playing out. The colony world of Threshamar had surrendered immediately when human ships appeared in their system. Now Captain Hennel of the hospital ship, Dagu's Mercy, was coordinating with local officials to provide medical aid to wounded Kralveth soldiers from earlier battles. "Captain," her chief medical officer, Dr. Jiho, approached with a concerned expression. "The Kralveth don't understand why we're treating their wounded. Some of them think it's a trick." Captain Hanul nodded. This was a problem they had encountered on every surrendered world. The Kralveth had spent centuries conquering other species, and they had never shown mercy to defeated enemies. The concept of treating enemy wounded was completely foreign to them. "Set up a meeting with their planetary governor," she ordered. "We need to explain how surrender works." An hour later, Captain Hanul sat across a table from Governor Vexthok, an elderly Kralveth, with battle scars covering his arms. Between them lay a treaty pad displaying the terms of surrender that the Human Council had prepared. "I don't understand," the governor said in broken standard. "Your warriors defeat us completely. Why do you not simply kill us and take our world?" Captain Hanul considered her answer carefully. "Governor, let me ask you a question. When your people conquered other worlds, what did you do with the survivors?" "We enslaved them or killed them," the governor replied honestly. "That is the way of the strong." "And how did that work out for your empire?" Captain Hanul asked. Governor Vexthok was quiet for several minutes. Finally, he said, "We spent all our time fighting rebellions and keeping slaves in line. We could never trust anyone. Every species we conquered hated us. Exactly, Captain Hunnell said. We don't want an empire of slaves who hate us. We want neighbors who understand that cooperation is better than conquest. She pointed to the treaty terms on the pad. You surrender your military. You give up your weapons of mass destruction. You agree to follow certain rules about how you treat other species. In return, we protect you from your enemies, we help rebuild what was damaged in the fighting, and we treat your people with respect. The governor stared at the pad. And if we refuse these terms? Captain Hunnell's expression didn't change, but her voice became colder. Then you become like the species who chose to keep fighting. Ask Governor Kralseth what happened to the hegemony fleet. Back on Vorthchem, the surrender was proceeding smoothly. Human troops had taken control of military installations without firing a shot. Kralveth soldiers were being processed as prisoners of war, and civilians were being protected in their homes. But not everyone was happy with the surrender. General Morthek had served the Kralveth Dominion for 40 years. He had conquered 6 worlds personally and had never retreated from a battle. The idea of surrendering to any enemy, especially one that he still thought of as primitive, filled him with rage. In the deep bunkers beneath the planetary capital, he gathered a group of loyal officers around him. Brothers, he said quietly, our coward of a governor has betrayed everything our people stand for. But we still have weapons, we still have soldiers, and we still have our honor. Captain Corvell, one of his most trusted subordinates, nodded grimly. What are your orders, General? The humans think they can occupy our world and dictate terms to us, General Morthek replied. They're about to learn that the Kralveth do not surrender. 3 days later, the resistance fighters struck. They attacked a human patrol, killing 2 soldiers and wounding 3 more. Then they disappeared into the underground tunnels that ran beneath the city. The response was swift and terrible. Within 6 hours, Sango, the human psychological warfare specialist, had identified every member of the resistance movement, using technology that could track life signs through solid rock, map emotional states through brain activity, and analyze behavior patterns from security footage. The humans found everyone who had been involved in the attack. But instead of simply killing the rebels, Sango tried something different. He had General Morthek brought to the capital's main plaza, where thousands of Kralveth civilians had gathered. The general was unharmed but restrained, flanked by 2 human soldiers in powered armor. Citizens of Vorthchem, Sango announced through translation devices. This individual chose to break the surrender agreement. He chose to kill human soldiers who were protecting your city. Now you will see what happens to those who make that choice. A holographic display appeared above the plaza, showing images from across Kralveth space, worlds where the population had chosen to keep fighting, cities that had been turned to ash, military installations that had been reduced to craters. These were Kralveth worlds that refused to surrender, Sango explained calmly. Every military target was destroyed. Every weapons facility was eliminated. Every soldier who continued to fight was killed. The images changed, showing other Kralveth worlds where the surrender had been honored. Cities being rebuilt, hospitals treating the wounded, human and Kralveth children playing together in schools. These are worlds that chose peace. Notice the difference, he turned to General Morthek. You have a choice, General. You can continue your resistance and we will eliminate you and everyone who follows you. Or you can use your influence to convince other potential rebels that cooperation is better than death. General Morthek stared at the images of destroyed worlds. He had helped create the Kralveth military culture that said, death was better than surrender. Now he was seeing the logical conclusion of that philosophy. What happens to me if I cooperate? He asked. You serve your sentence as a prisoner of war, Sango replied. You're treated according to the rules. When this is over, you go home to your family. The general looked out at the thousands of Kralveth civilians in the plaza. Many of them had children. All of them were depending on his choice. I will cooperate, he said finally. Sango nodded. Wise decision. Now help us contact the other resistance groups. Help us explain to them why fighting is pointless. Over the following weeks, the pattern repeated itself across Kralveth space. Worlds that surrendered were treated with respect and dignity. Their civilians were protected, their wounded were healed, and their infrastructure was rebuilt. Worlds that continued to fight were systematically destroyed. The message was clear and consistent. Cooperate with humanity, and you will be treated fairly. Fight against humanity, and you will be eliminated. Within 3 months, the Kralveth Dominion, An empire that had taken 2 centuries to build no longer existed. Some worlds had chosen surrender and were now being rebuilt under human protection. Others had chosen resistance and were now empty ruins orbiting dead stars. Commander Zethkar sat in a prisoner of war camp on the human colony world of New Sol. The conditions were better than most. Kralveth civilians had lived under their own government. The food was adequate. The medical care was excellent. 1 year after the fall of the Kralveth Dominion, the Galactic Council chambers looked very different. The Great Crystal Hall still caught the light of distant stars, but the seating arrangement had changed dramatically. Where once the most aggressive species had held positions of honor near the center, now those seats were occupied by representatives of smaller, peaceful civilizations. At the head of the council table sat Ambassador Yuna, no longer in the observers section, but in the chair reserved for the most influential species in the galaxy. She wore the same simple diplomatic uniform she had always preferred, but now when she spoke, 847 species listened carefully to every word. Elder Kethmaran approached the center of the hall with the slow, careful steps of extreme age. His translucent form seemed even more fragile than before, but his ancient eyes were bright with something that might have been satisfaction. "My friends," he began, his voice carrying easily through the vast chamber, "I come before you today not with a warning but with a confirmation. The events of this past year have proven what my people have long known. Humanity is not like other species." The hall was completely silent. Every representative present had seen the reports from former Kralveth space. They had all witnessed what happened when someone ignored the Elder's warnings about humanity. "Some of you have asked me why the Vorthak never tried to stop the younger races from provoking the humans," Elder Kethmoran continued. "Why we did not intervene when it became clear that species like the Kralveth would not listen to our warnings." He gestured toward Ambassador Yuna with one translucent hand. "The answer is simple. Humanity does not need our protection. They never did. The warnings were not to protect them. The warnings were to protect you from them." Admiral Seoyoung stood on the bridge of the peacekeeping ship Seoul's Pride, watching as her fleet patrolled the space that had once belonged to the Kralveth Dominion. 24 human vessels moved in perfect formation through the sector, their sensors monitoring everything for signs of trouble. "Admiral," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving a distress signal from the Vorthak colony of Kethron. They report that hegemony raiders are attacking their outer settlements." Admiral Seoyoung nodded calmly. This was the 4th such attack this month. Ever since the fall of the Kralveth, various criminal organizations and rogue military units had been testing the new galactic order, trying to see if humanity would really intervene to protect other species. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "We're changing course for Kethron, and send a message to the hegemony leadership. Tell them they have 30 minutes to call off their raiders before we consider this an act of war." "Ma'am," her tactical officer said hesitantly, "the hegemony has over 500 ships in this sector. We only have 24. Admiral Seoyoung smiled, the same cold smile that human military officers had been practicing for generations. 24 is more than enough. Meanwhile, on the former Kralveth colony world of New Vorthgam, Director Seungmin was overseeing the reconstruction of a city that had been badly damaged during the final battle of the war. Human engineers worked alongside Kralveth civilians to rebuild homes, schools, and hospitals. Director, called Engineer Kyungsu, approaching with a datapad, the Kralveth Council of Elders wants to discuss the new educational curriculum. Director Seungmin sighed. This was one of the more challenging aspects of rebuilding former enemy territory. The Kralveth had spent centuries teaching their children that strength was the only virtue, and that weaker species deserved to be enslaved or destroyed. Changing that mindset was going to take generations. "What are their concerns?" he asked. "They're worried that teaching cooperation and diplomatic solutions will make their children weak," Kyungsu replied. "They think the new curriculum doesn't prepare young Kralveth for the realities of the galaxy." Director Seungmin walked to the window of his temporary office and looked out at the city below. Kralveth and human children were playing together in the rebuilt parks. Former enemy soldiers were working with human engineers to install new water treatment facilities. Elderly Kralveth who had survived the war were teaching traditional crafts to young human colonists. "Set up a meeting with the council," he said. "I want to show them something." 2 days later, The Kralveth Council of Elders sat in Director Shungmin's office, watching a holographic display that showed data from across the former Dominion space. "This is the colony world of Threshmar," Director Shungmin explained, gesturing to a thriving city full of Kralveth civilians. "They surrendered immediately when our fleet arrived. Notice their current population levels, economic indicators, and standard of living." The display changed to show another world. This one a barren wasteland of twisted metal and broken stone. "This is Morthek Prime. They chose to fight to the end." Notice the population level. The number on the screen was 0. Your old curriculum taught your children that being strong meant being willing to fight and die for their beliefs. Director Shungmin continued. "Our curriculum teaches children that being strong means being smart enough to choose their battles carefully." Elder Kethvok, the oldest member of the Kralveth Council, spoke in a gravelly voice. "You are saying that surrender can be a form of strength?" "I'm saying that my species spent thousands of years learning the difference between courage and stupidity," Director Shungmin replied. "We learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit when you're wrong and ask for help." He gestured toward the window, where they could see Kralveth children playing with human children. "Your grandchildren are going to grow up in a galaxy where cooperation is rewarded and aggression is punished. They're going to learn that their strength comes not from their ability to hurt others, but from their ability to work together to solve problems." Elder Kethvok was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "And if someone threatens them? If someone tries to hurt these children who have learned to cooperate instead of fight?" Director Shungmin's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "Then they call their human friends, and we remind the galaxy why the elders told everyone to leave us alone." Back in the Galactic Council chambers, Elder Kethmaran was approaching the end of his address to the assembled species. "Humanity has established what they call the Terran Protection Protocols," he explained. "Any species that threatens civilian populations of any race will face immediate intervention by human forces. Any government that practices slavery will find their economy mysteriously collapsing as human agents work to free the enslaved. Any military force that targets schools, hospitals, or refugee camps will discover why humanity's reputation for mercy does not extend to those who harm the innocent." Commander Vextar of the Hegemony, the same officer who had laughed at Elder Kethmaran's warnings a year earlier, raised his hand nervously. "Elder, what if the threatened species doesn't want human protection? What if they prefer to handle their own problems?" Elder Kethmaran turned his ancient gaze toward the commander. "An excellent question. Ambassador Yuna, would you care to explain humanity's position on this matter?" Yuna stood and walked to the center of the hall. She moved with quiet confidence, no longer the frustrated diplomat trying to gain acceptance for her people, but the representative of the most powerful military force in known space. "The protection protocols are not optional," she said simply. "If you attack civilians, we will stop you. If you practice slavery, we will free your slaves. If you target children, we will end you." She paused, looking around the hall at representatives from hundreds of different species. "However, how you run your internal affairs is still your business, as long as you follow certain basic rules. Don't attack other species. Don't enslave people. Don't commit genocide. Don't target non-combatants in your conflicts." Commander Vextar shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "And if a species refuses to follow these rules?" Yuna's expression remained calm and professional. "Then you end up like the Kralveth Dominion. Some of you learn to live under our protection. The rest of you become cautionary tales for the species that come after you." The bluntness of her statement sent a wave of uneasy murmurs through the assembly. "But," Yuna continued, raising her voice slightly, "we prefer cooperation to conquest. We would rather have neighbors than subjects. We would rather build than destroy." She gestured toward the viewing windows of the Great Hall, where the lights of peaceful star systems could be seen twinkling in the darkness. "Look around you. For the first time in galactic history, there are no major wars being fought anywhere in known space. Slavery has been eliminated in 47 systems. 3 species that were on the verge of extinction have been brought back from the brink." She walked back toward her seat. "We didn't set out to become the galaxy's peacekeepers. We just wanted to be left alone to raise our children and build our civilization. But someone decided to kill our children, and now here we are." Elder Kethmaran nodded slowly, And there, my friends, is the final lesson of this story. Humanity did not seek this responsibility. They did not ask to become the guardians of galactic peace, but when forced to choose between their compassion and their children's safety, they chose their children. He began to move slowly back toward his seat. The result is the safest.